And welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the HighLowSports podcast. Prediction season continues here as the NFL season is right around the corner. We are 1 week and about 24 hours away from degenerately yelling at the TV screen over football once again for the NFL. It is DJ joined, as always, by my co-host, Kelcey. And Kelcey, it is our final week for divisions. We saved arguably the best or the worst, the least or the beast for the last, as we'll be breaking down the Easts, ones that are very near and dear to your heart and to your anger.
Yeah, screaming unnecessarily at a TV is going to happen this week anyways. As a college football fan, I don't discriminate. I will be yelling at the TV screen. Actually, who am I kidding? I already yelled at the TV screen in week 0 of college football season. I'm going to be yelling week 1 of college football season. I'm going to be yelling week 1 of the NFL season, especially when they decide to send 2 teams that wear green to a stadium in Brazil where there is a ban on the color green, because that's intelligent. But no, yeah, I mean, obviously the East we're talking about today, and I need to say this up front and be honest. I did these picks completely blind. I didn't try to put numbers by teams on intentionally. I just did them completely blind.
In case anyone is curious how we do this, we go to a thing that lets us pick every game of every week for the season. And then we figure out what it generates at the end of it too. It's not just like, oh, I got vibes for here, I got vibes for here. We cover it up, we blind pick it, and we see what it comes out with. And it spits it out, and we're like, this is what we're rolling with. So for better or for worse, and we did these a while ago. So some of them might change a little bit on the back end, but you know what? We're rolling with them now. Most of them we're feeling pretty good with. But without any further ado, well, and by feeling good with, I mean we're gonna roll with it regardless.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm rolling with it no matter what. But yeah, maybe not feeling good.
We're gonna go ahead and start things off with the AFC East, which it used to be the least for a while. Last year was thought to be a beast. This year, it's famine or feast, I guess. I don't know. It's a very weird division, but starting from the bottom to the top, I'll go quickly through it. Bottom, there is absolutely zero surprise. I have the New England Patriots at 4-13. I think Drake May is very talented. I think he's going to be a very good quarterback. It is not this year, that likely. I like Jacoby Brissett, one of my favorite players in the NFL, but there's a ceiling there, and it's not very high. And that team is miserable, and they are completely reloading and retooling. If they end up being the worst to first team this year, I will be humbly surprised. Every year there's one. This is one I just have trouble seeing the path, I guess. It's a rebuilding year, so 4-13, a rough season for the Patriots. We'll move on from there. I'm not here to bully them. Number 3, we have the Miami Dolphins, and I have the Miami Dolphins at 9-8. So they're going to be right in the thick of it, right down to the playoff hunt. I hate some of their losses. Christian Wilkins, I think, hurts. Offensive lines get breaking down a little bit too. Obviously, Tua, Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill, outstanding, dynamic. 70% of their cap space, it feels like, between those few. And bombs away when it's going good, it's going to go great. Devon Achane in open space as good as anyone. Raheem Mostert, so on and so forth. Best track team in the NFL. I do worry a little bit about no more Xavier Howard opposite Jalen Ramsey. Love Javon Holland, but I wonder, can Chop Robinson fill some of the role Christian Wilkins had? And we kind of saw last year, every time they played a above 500 team or anything below 60 degrees, they kind of struggled a bit. And I think everywhere else got a little bit better. So I think they'll be fine. They're 9-8. They're in the thick of it. You'll find out when we start talking playoffs if I have them getting in or not, but they're clearly right in the midst of it. So no hate on the Dolphins. I just think there's only so many spots. I mean, you can't win every single game. And I think, I don't know if he's on the PUP list. I don't know if he's even practiced with them yet. I don't know what's going on there. So we'll wait and see how that plays out. There's just a lot of things that I have questions about moving forward. Number 2, I have the Buffalo Bills, the 4-year defending champions, the kings of the AFC East, the handful of years. I'm going to have the Buffalo Bills next. I have them going 11-6, 3-3 in the division. So they're going to be very good. I think the loss of Gabe Davis and Stephon Diggs is obviously going to hurt a little bit, but I think it's been a little bit over dramatized just a touch. I think Gabe Davis's job was block and run straight really far, and sometimes randomly get like 3 catches for $160 and 2 touchdowns. I think they will fill that role just fine with Keon Coleman, Matt Collins, whoever those guys are going to be. They'll be fine. Khalil Shakir I'm telling you, it's just Khalil Shakir season. Down the stretch last year, he was receiver 1 for the team when Stephon Diggs wasn't getting the ball. I think his ability to catch a 3-yard ball and turn it into a 12-yard gain, very elusive. He's like a punt returner, basically, with receiver skill sets. Very refined skill set with the ability to be elusive in space. I think this is we like Dalton Kincaid stand account for both of us. Very good tight end. Both loved him coming out of Utah. Dawson Knox is your tight end too. Arguably the best tight end duo. Offensive line could be better, could be worse. Defense, I think it got a little bit better despite not a lot of the losses they have. I wish Matt Milano could stay healthy though. I think they're going to be fine. 11-6, still the Buffalo Bills, and you still have Josh Allen, the best touchdown scoring machine in the NFL, as far considering his passing and running. So Bills at number 2 at 11-6, and at the top of the division, that leaves the team that has not won it. Believe it or not, the Colts have won this division, but more recently than the Jets have. And so that is the New York Jets at the top, also at 11-6. Weirdly enough, I've been going 3-3 in the division as well. So this tiebreaker is literally like conference. It's the very weird how did we get here tiebreaker, basically. It's not head-to-heads because they split. It's not division record because they have the same record. It ends up being like conference record or something along those lines. But Garrett Wilson's awesome. Breece Hall is awesome. Michael Williams, when he's healthy, is awesome for those 8 or so games. Their offensive line's a little bit better with some of the additions they've made. Defensive, we already know secondary is good. Linebackers are good. Front line's good. They won 7 games the last couple years with Zach Wilson, a quarterback, and Matt White. So if Aaron Rodgers is 75% of what we think he could be, 80%, just pretty good nonetheless, with the occasional, wow, he's still got it play here or there, I think they're going to be just fine. And even if he's not, or if he gets hurt again, God forbid, being 40 years old, Tyrod Taylor is a significant upgrade, assuming he doesn't get stabbed in the chest again. So I'm going to say, whichever quarterback it ends up being, I think they're in a good spot to just win a few more games as the Bills come back down just a touch, the Dolphins come back down a touch, the Jets go up a touch. So I don't know if they'll light the world on fire. I think it's going to be a eye test that's almost going to feel disappointing for those who think the Jets are going to go 13-4 and they're the team to beat. But they're going to find ways to win games. Some of them be ugly. Aaron Rodgers throw for like 180 yards and a touchdown in some games. Other games he'll throw for 3 touchdowns and like 280, and Breece Hall will give you 120. Like they're built to find very unique ways to win. And I think just Aaron Rodgers, the old veteran that he is at the quarterback, I think that's going to count for a couple wins by itself. Even if he doesn't. Remember Peyton Manning with Denver that Super Bowl year where he was clearly debilitated, that arm was gone. There's a reason they unbenched him for the last couple weeks going to the playoffs, considering he couldn't throw the ball over 25 yards basically without his arm exploding. Sometimes just having the sparks and the wherewithal at that point ends up paying dividends when the rest of the team's well-rounded. So I think he'll pay that for the Jets, and even if it's not, Tyrod Taylor can fill a lot of that role too. So we have the Jets going 11-6, getting the tiebreaker over the Bills, and for the first time since before we were born, I think literally, actually, the Jets will win the AFC East.
That's a bold move, Cotton. Bold move. I honestly,
not according to Vegas,
don't hate the option. Yeah, I was gonna say I don't hate it. I may or may not have put $5 on this exact bet to happen. But did I pick them in mind? We'll have to wait and see in just a minute. But I don't hate your list by any means. I understand where you're coming from with this list. Honestly, I have very similar thoughts on it, and I'll get to mine in a minute. But I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head with a couple of these. I think the Dolphins, you lose Xavier Howard, that's a loss. There's no way around that. That is a loss. You lose Christian Watkins, and that's a huge loss. I mean, talk about a defensive tackle that's underrated in today's day and age. Absolutely, you need him on the team. Like it sucks that they lost him. We all watched the Giants Hard Knocks, so it sucks. They tried to go get him, and just to prove my point that they were trying to go get him. And if the Giants know to go get somebody, that's when you know that there is potentially a really good player on the market that even the blind can see.
That's when they have Dexter Lawrence already in the middle. Christian Wilkins is so good, like we don't care. We'll find a way to make it work.
Yeah, it's my dig at the Giants early on in this episode. Go figure that we're talking East, and I'm already digging on the Giants. But yeah, I can't help it. But no, I do think that's important for the Dolphins to be mentioned. And with the Jets, I do think there's a wild card there that is Aaron Rodgers. You just don't know what's going to happen after that Achilles injury. You don't know what's going to happen after I missed a practice thing. There's a lot of questions for the Jets. I just don't know what the right answer is going to be. 11-6 seems completely possible with that defense, and 11-6 seems completely unattainable at times with that defense. You just don't know. You do know one thing: that Sauce is going to sauce, and Quinnen Williams is going to do what Quinnen Williams does. Other than that, the rest of that defense, can they step up and play to Robert Saleh's level? That's the question I need answering. But I don't think 11-6 is out of the question by any means.
Absolutely. And I do think Breece Hall is going to be involved a lot in that passing game for that to happen too. Yeah. I think he's got to be a big factor in the offense. I think Garrett Wilson's going to Garrett Wilson. His targets will probably be the same, just more of them are going to be catchable. More of them are going to be like getting him actually open, like on some of those routes. He always has high targets. The problem is they're 5 yards out of bounds or they're in triple coverage. So that's why his catch to target ratio is always a little bit off because he's the only one you can force feed. Now, when they force feed, it would be, I think, Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams. Even if he's going to force feed him, he puts the ball in a way where he can make a play and not die. And if it's one-on-one, he's going to give him a great chance. So I look for Garrett Wilson to have, I don't want to say the breakout that everyone expected last year that propelled him into like a top 8 fantasy pick, but I think we finally get to see more of what we saw coming out of Ohio State. Like, oh, Garrett Wilson, yeah, there's a reason he was the second receiver off the board. I think we're going to see a lot more of that this year, and it's going to show a lot in the standings. But just to quickly wrap up my AFC East predictions for those of you just tuning in from the bottom of the top, New England Patriots, a rough season at 4-13. Miami Dolphins, 9-8. The Buffalo Bills at 11-6, and the Jets with the tiebreaker at 11-6, taking the AFC East. So, Kelcey, that's what I'm looking at for the AFC East. There's some beasts, and for the Patriots, it is unfortunately a least. Unless they prove me wrong, it's almost tempted to put $5 on it because it seems so implausible that it just will happen. But, Kelcey, the floor is yours for the AFC East. Who is on the floor of the AFC East?
Yeah, I'll say no surprise to absolutely anybody out there if you pay attention to anything sports. I have Patriots 4-13, ironically. And no, this is not just copying and pasting his homework. I did, again, just pick these blindly, and this is what happens. And mind you, this is with Bailey Zappi on the roster that I still pick this to happen. And now Bailey Zappi is not on the roster. And say what you will, but he has the same interception to completion ratio over the last 2 years as Dak Prescott. I don't know if that's a good thing or bad thing. I'll let everybody else weigh in on that. But yeah, no, I don't trust the Patriots offense to do well. I don't trust their coordinators to do well. That's just really where I'm at. You lost an all-time world-class head coach. You lost an all-world quarterback, and you still haven't recovered. And you won't recover, really. That the way that works is it doesn't work like Joe Montana, Steve Young. There's no transition from Bill Walsh to Steve Mariucci. That doesn't happen. Those things aren't regular. They are very few and far between. And so this is going to be a 5 to 7 year process for the Patriots. And right now we're in the middle of it. So yeah, this is where I'm at with them, 4-13. Hopefully they win more for the Patriots fans. I don't hope you win more, but maybe you will for your own sakes. You've won enough, so maybe just take it easy and give some to the rest of us. But yeah, so 4-13 for the Patriots.
Yeah,
and
no
then
comment.
Moving on up the division. Yeah, up the division, we're going to go to the Jets, 9-8. Like I said, I don't hate the idea of the Jets going 11-6, but I'm not in love with the idea. 9-8 feels like a very comfortable spot where I'm putting them, where I feel like no matter what defense shows up here, mind you, every time I've talked about the Jets here, it is not about the offense, and the reason why is I am not worried about the offense. It's purely about the defense, and it's purely about the players around Quinnen and Sauce to step up and actually perform. That's what it always comes down to with me for these type of defenses. Your coach is obviously a defensive head coach. He knows how to coach defenses. And when you guys are at your best, you are one of the best defenses in the league. And you're the reason Zach Wilson has any wins. But now you have A-Rod. And now you have a running back who's actually healthy in Breece Hall. So I think there's an opportunity there for the Jets if they can perform. But 9-8 is where I have them, while there are still growing pains within that defense. So, moving up the list one more time, and maybe surprising nobody here, I have the Dolphins, 9-8. Again, this is one where DJ hit the nail on the head. Under 60 degrees, this team sucks. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. This team is awful under 60 degrees. It's Tua's bad. It's Tyreek is bad. It's their running backs are never healthy. Their left tackle decides to get hurt under 60 degrees. Their defensive line can't perform under 60 degrees. Granted, last year, there is obviously a major injury that happened there with Phillips, and now he's back healthy, but how well is he going to perform? That's a question as well that you need to have answered. But there's holes in that defense. You got to fill them. Are you going to fill them with the young players? Are they going to step up? We'll have to wait and see. But you do have a lot of talent on this roster to be a mid-level team. With 9-8 where they are, both them and the Jets, there's conversations for where they can be in the playoffs, obviously, but we'll get to those a little bit later on. And finally, top of the division, the not cellar dwellers for the first time. And I'm just kidding. This team's been up here a lot, obviously, and that's the Buffalo Bills. 10-7. I don't have a lot of faith in this defense, but I have a lot of faith in their offense. And that's a whole lot of faith in their offense. I think there's pieces of their defense that are really good. I just think they're getting older in certain places, and they didn't really do a whole lot to try to help their secondary. That like you can't get rid of 2 all-pro safeties in the last 4 years and expect to still succeed. I'm sorry, you're replacing him with a guy who literally died on the field and Taylor Rapp. I don't think that's an efficient enough replacements. And obviously, I'm no fault to DeMar Hamlin. He's a fantastic story, but on the field in the last year, not the greatest performances on the field. So whether he's actually replacing him or they're going to fill in that gap with somebody else, that's a whole nother conversation. But it doesn't make me happy if I'm trying to pick for the Bills to succeed. But that offense, there's nothing wrong with that offense by any means. Josh Allen just needs to calm down on the picks, which I think he'll do. Not having Stephon Diggs really, I think, helps him. He's one of those guys that doesn't need the all-world receivers because he feels like I have an all-world receiver. I need to throw the ball to him. And I think this is going to help him kind of spread the ball out more and be a little more efficient. And you mentioned Dalton Kincaid. Yes. Just feed the guy. See what happens. I do like him. I do think that this is the Cook that I'm excited to see in the backfield this year. In James Cook, I think he's going to have a much better performance this season. But yeah, it is one I still have to wait and see with the Bills, just because I don't have a lot of faith in that defense. So I'm not expecting 12 to 14 wins for this team. So yeah, that's what I got, DJ.
I will say, if they want to fix safety, there is a very good safety on the free agent market by the name of Micah Hyde they could bring in there. He might be able to fill in just fine if they need it. But
he seems to have a home there, maybe even as well.
I'm just saying if that's something they need. But we're kind of in agreement there with the Bills. Dolphins, it feels like between those 3 teams, they're all very interchangeable. It feels like an injury here, an injury there, or just like how the schedule falls can make a big difference between these 3 who ends up being at the top and the bottom. It feels like they're all very close. And then unfortunately, the Patriots I don't think they're anyone's pick for it to escape the cellar. It feels like this is repercussions for the last 20 years. Like they must stay down there a little bit longer.
Yeah. This is where you have to pay. This is your penance, for sure. And for what it's worth mentioning, I have both the Jets and Dolphins going 3-3 in division. It's just split by head-to-heads there. And then for the Bills, 1 game more win, but they go 5-1 in the division, which is where the difference maker is there. I think they do have this division's number right now. But it happens in spurts, right? This entire division is one of those ones where it can be dominant for 3 to 4 years and then they fall off a cliff. So any team at any point in time, except for the Patriots for 20 years with Tom Brady. But other than that, every other team seemed to be pretty dominant. So yeah, that's what I have. Just to recap that real quick, and that is going to be at the bottom, working our way up. The Patriots 4-13, Jets 9-8. The Dolphins, also 9-8, and them darn pesky Buffalo Bills at 10-7, winning the AFC East.
As some things change, they always stay the same. And for second to the last time we have the anonymous fan vote, and taking a look at that one. Patriots in the cellar at 2-15, the Bills at 9-8, the Dolphins at 10-7, and the Jets at 12-5. So, as I said, some things stay the same, some things get worse, some things are very.
Can we pull that back up one more time? I need to see this again. Just it doesn't get any better the second time around. Man, that's rough. 2-15. Like there's bad. I don't think they're that bad, but yeah, I think the Patriots 2-13. That's rough.
It feels like a score if they win 4 at this point. Like they got it, there's definitely an uphill road, but if they get 2-15, like that's gonna be an interesting first overall pick next year, assuming they have the first overall pick, or if somebody else gets worse. But we'll have to wait and see for that one. But
you got to draft receivers to win. That's all I got to say. You get a quarterback that's great, but you got to draft receivers. You got to draft younger offensive linemen.
They got Jalen Polk, but that's just about it at this point. They need some offensive linemen, some more receivers, some more defense. You just traded away some red sleeves, so you got some work to do there. Do like Christian Gonzalez coming back, though. I will say I am a fan of him coming back healthy.
Yes.
That's about it, though. That's the good saving point. But the good news is with Patriots games is if they do struggle and go 2-15 like that, tickets to those games might be pretty cheap. So if you're in the area, you can go see some other teams play football at that stadium for a pretty good price.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. If you guys have not gone and checked it out yet, head on over to SeatGeek.com to get your first purchase with the code BellyUpSports for $20 off. If you guys need to check out any one of these teams, whether it be the AFC East or the NFC East we're about to talk about, or any one of the other divisions that we've talked about this season, all you have to do, again, head on over to SeatGeek.com, enter the code BellyUpSports, and get $20 off your first purchase. And look, go check out your favorite team and maybe get a chance to see Bailey Zappi on whatever team he ends up, hopefully the Dallas Cowboys.
Well, right now he looks like he's with Kansas City, so we'll see how long that lasts for sure. Maybe we see as Bailey Zappi sighting for Kansas City somehow, some way, or maybe he gets traded. It's an uphill battle, but it might just happen. That'd be the most Bailey Zappi thing to come back and zap with the Patriots in Foxborough. But that's not going to take us to Kelcey's favorite division. That is the NFC East. And as per usual, we will have to break out some sort of apparel for the second one. We will honor arguably the greatest center of all time and $100 million podcaster in Jason Kelcey now as we talk about the Eagles and the NFC East. So the division that since 2004 has not had a repeat division champion. So will that trend continue or not? We'll have to wait and see, but I'll go and get us started from the bottom. Not a lot of surprise here. I have the New York Football Giants, and I think it's going to be another rough season. I have them going 5-12. I love their defensive line with Brian Williams, sexy Dexter Lawrence, and Kayvon Thibodeau. After that, I don't know what else really is there to smile about. I mean, like Malik Neighbors, I think he's going to be very good, but I did see that they unretired the number 1 so he could wear it, which I think is kind of cool. That like the family from the Giants player that it was retired for basically gave blessing to unretire, so Malik Neighbors could wear number 1. So that's kind of cool. Other than that, though, I mean, Daniel Jones is responsible for throwing in the ball. Drew Lock is responsible for throwing the ball. I don't really love those options. I think in fantasy, it's a little shaky. He's a best ball baller is how I classified him. We did our breakdown is he's going to have some weeks where he's awesome, but then other weeks where they're just going to double team him. And there's just not a lot to love with the team right now. They're clearly in a reload and a rebuild. And there's just not a lot to love. So I won't spend too much time on the Giants. I'm worried that's another one where you get tickets to watch the other team play at this point. And they play on that dangerous field of MetLife Stadium where people get injured all the time. So like I don't even trust that. We're going to move on from the Giants. I'm already tired about talking about it. I think it's going to be a rough season for them. But moving on to speaking of stadiums that are basically death traps, I have the Washington Commanders at next in the division at 6-11. This is it. They have a very strong chance to do that worst to first flip that we see all the time. Young, dynamic quarterback, scary like it's Terry McLaurin, new coach in Dan Quinn. So a really good draft, but I still don't see it. I'm still worried about that defense. Dan Quinn's a very good defensive mind, but he doesn't have a Micah Parsons that he could completely or a Trayvon Diggs or guys like that he could change the game with defensively. Deron Payne and Jonathan Allen are awesome, but they're not running a 4-3 off the edge. They're going to eat the middle, and then someone's going to walk around the edge, basically. They don't have the – if you let me have Montez Sweat back on this team, we'll see. I think they just – there's some building on that defense and offensive line. Jaden Daniels is – we'll talk more in awards next week, but I think he's very much in that contention for Rookie of the Year. I think he's like second in odds or something like that, rightfully so. But I don't love the Commanders this year for winning a lot of games. I love them to be fun, though. They will be exciting. They will be dynamic. They will lose games like 32-28. I think there will be a lot of fun games. Jaden Daniels will give Commanders fans heart attacks with the almost cartoonish way he gets hit sticks sometimes. He usually gets up, but watching him get hit, it almost feels like you're watching Looney Tunes, the way his body flails and bends sometimes. But that's going to take us now to number 2 in the division. That is Kelcey's Dallas Cowboys. I'm sitting at 10-7. Losing Dan Quinn, I think, will hurt a little bit. The CeeDee Lamb contract dispute, I think, will hurt a little bit. Dak is still Dak. Dalvin Cook, Ezekiel Elliott, Deuce Vaughn, I don't know what they're going to do at running back. We'll see. They didn't really get better, so I think they're going to take a step back this year. In the division, I think they got the least better of everybody, but they were the best last year. So I think they always win 12 games usually. That's been kind of their MO the last few years. I think that takes a step back to 10-7, but it's still the Cowboys. They'll still find a way to get it done. Deron Bland's going to miss, I think, 8 weeks, it looks like right now with an injury, but you get Trayvon Diggs coming back. So we will once again have to wait to see those two on the field at the same time to see how that plays out. Still have a lot of good defensive personnel, still got CeeDee Lamb. You still got pretty good offensive line, Brandon Cooks. They'll be fine overall. I just don't think they'll be they won't terrify people like they were doing at certain stretches last year. I still have them going 4-2 in the division because Dak owns the NFC East in those matchups, basically. That will take us now to number 1. I do have the Philadelphia Eagles bouncing back and taking the division with a 12-5 record. I don't care about the Saquon Barkley edition. Saquon's awesome, but I don't care about that as much. I think he's going to be fun, but he's not the reason we're here. Losing Jason Kelcey is absolutely awful. Almost any other offensive line losing Jason Kelcey, I think, cripples you to third in the division. This is like one of the 2 or 3 offensive lines where you can they had enough depth with like Landon Dickerson and those other guys that they could make it work. My biggest thing that I love about them is the coordinator switches. Bringing in Vic Fangio defensively, I think, is an upgrade, especially over what they were doing last year. Like, that was just rough. Like, if nothing else, I think they'll get some takeaways again. And then offensively, I love Kelsey's boy Kellen Moore as the offensive coordinator. Their biggest issue last year, I think, was especially against blitzes, like cover zero type blitzes. They had absolutely no answer because their entire offense was quarterback draw, tush push, bombs up the sideline, inside zone. They had almost no, or the occasional little RPO to Dallas Goedert before he got hurt. Their offense was incredibly vanilla. It was we joke about it. It was like taking a very Spark Notes dumbed down version of Shane Steichen's offense from 2022 and trying to run it. Like if you're playing Madden and you give the controller to like a nephew and say, "Hey, just press X," and they just run halfback dive and spam X the whole time, basically, or A button if you're on Xbox. I think that's what we saw last year. I think Kellen Moore, they're going to have answers for blitzes. They're going to have hots, alerts. What we saw with Amari Cooper, we saw with CeeDee Lamb. We saw it last year too with Keenan Allen and Mike Williams when they were healthy with Justin Herbert for all of 8 minutes. Problem was everybody broke it periodically, so we didn't get to see it as much of the the Chargers, excuse me, not the Jets. Although the Jets, everyone broke too. But I think we're going to see a lot of those questions answered. Secondary-wise, they're better. I'm not going to say Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, and all those guys are going to transform them into a top 1 defense. They're just going to be less bad defensively. They're going to get some takeaways. They're not going to get toasted. But my biggest takeaway is offensively, I think they're going to be dynamic again. And Jalen Hurts is going to have – there's going to be answers for Jalen Hurts, not just, hey, save us, guy. And I think he'll be healthier this year. It's not just A.J. Brown's down there with Chipotle somewhere. He'll make a play. Or, hey, Devon, it's not just relying on their talent to win. They actually will run an offense this year. So I'm going to have the Eagles taking the division at 12-5. And right now I think it's still going to be the Cowboys and the Eagles battling at the top, though. I am sorry to the Commanders and the Giants. I think the Commanders will be competitive, but I'm going to give the Eagles bouncing back and take this one in a close race down to the end, nonetheless.
Yeah, I don't hate this.
Well,
People might be like, "Oh, you're a Cowboys fan. How dare you say you don't hate the fact that Eagles are 12-5?" No, I really don't hate that. In all reality, it's just the Eagles for me. I'll have my own reasons why they're not first in the division, but I do think they're a team that is capable of 12-5 in their best days. But I've learned to not pick on the best days, if that makes sense. Pick for a potentially worst case scenario seems to be the most likely. And when I say worst case, I don't mean like somebody goes down with a catastrophic injury. I mean just like, okay, what games should you win but you lose type of picking. So I'll get to that in a minute. And then, anyways. But I do think an underrated part of the Eagles, you mentioned they suck versus cover zero. Part of that, and people aren't ready to have this conversation about Jalen Hurts, but Jalen Hurts, while mobile, is an unwilling runner of the ball in the passing game.
He's not moving to run, basically. Like, he's not throwing on the run a whole lot. Once he moves, he's taking it.
And he has been an unwilling runner of the ball when it's a pass play. And that's just the way he is. Ever since that injury in his rookie year, or was it sophomore year, whatever, second year in the league. And ever since that moment, he came back and it was just like, there's a little something different about Jalen. And the fact is, he is a passer. He is very Donovan McNabb-esque in his ability to pass the ball. He does not choose to actively run. Now, if the play call is a run, like the tush push, he will do that. What did they go and do to help him? That's go add Jahan Dotson as an actual legitimate number 3 who has experience getting into the end zone, not just carrying the ball down the field 40 yards and then going out of bounds. But yeah, I like this team. I like the top 2 receivers. Obviously, they're talented. It'd be stupid to say otherwise. But the Eagles are the Eagles. And if there's one fault on this team, it may not lie on the offensive side of the ball, but it may be that defensive side of the ball, and especially that secondary. There's questions. So while you go 12-5 with them, I'm thinking something different in my head when I'm talking about this team. So yeah, we'll get to that in a minute. But yeah, I don't hate any of your other picks. I understand them all. They all make sense. Surprisingly, you were meaner to the Giants than I was. So go figure.
I wanted to make the Giants higher. When I look back, it's like, damn, really? But like then when you look back to the schedule, it's like there's just a lot of if they're gonna have a better record, it's gonna be like 2022 where they're gonna escape randomly with a lot of those weird close games, like when they went on that playoff run. And I don't know if Lightning's gonna strike twice like that in 3 years. They're built differently, but not in a great way. It feels like they're not good built differently. They're built differently, not built different.
They're built different, but not good different, but bad different.
They're built different like Boeing at this point. It feels like outside the defensive line, they're doing the right things. Like Malik Neighbors is a good pick. They did some bringing in Brian Burns. The problem is you got work to do. You overachieved too quickly in 2022. But I will say with the Eagles thing, just wrapping up before I recap everything, if they don't make the playoffs, I think he gets fired. Or if they're like a 7 seed and they get crushed in round one, like disappointment, anything, I feel like they got to at least be like a 5 seed. Like at minimum, let's say the Cowboys, it's like last year where they're 12-5, and then the Cowboys are 13-4, something like that, or Cowboys are 12-5 or 11. You got to be at least a 5 seed. Anything less than that, and with how much they've invested in the team and how much Roseman's won the offseason for the third year in a row, he has to at least get the 5 seed at minimum. So
I'm going to say just playoffs, but I get what you're saying.
I'll say if they do make the playoffs and at the 7th seed and then get cooked right away, he's gone. But if he makes it the 7th seed and wins, then okay, maybe. I'll rephrase that. Has to win a playoff game then. Or if you lose, it's by like the skin of your teeth, like Jared Goff throws a late touchdown pass or something
or
like that. Or
you lose on some fluke of a pass interference that doesn't get called again type of thing. All the Saints type of
field goal or something like that. If you get smoked, like if it's last year reincarnated, Nick Sirianni is gone. And if at any point they're below 500 after week 6, he's gone in the season. I think that leash is very, very short. So I hate to say that because I don't hate Nick Sirianni as much as other guys do, but I think his way of doing things and his demeanor runs thin when the results aren't there. Unfortunately, it's similar to Bill, just without 15 years behind it, if that makes sense, with New England, where he had a 20-year resume of like, all right, it works until it doesn't. And I think
you need to clarify which Bill you're talking about because it's not necessarily Belichick.
Well, I'm saying in Bill Belichick, he wore people thin, but when you actually have the success, people are willing to deal with it.
I was thinking he's more Bill Parcells than he is Belichick in his just attitude and demeanor, and just again same concept. He doesn't have the background to back it up, but same problems as Parcells, especially.
Same ideas. Like doing your demeanor and kind of way you go about things. When it works, it's great. Everyone overlooks it, but when you underachieve, that's when they start to point fingers. Especially when your expectation is so high because Howie Roseman is the ultimate Madden GM in the offseason, for better and for worse. So we'll see. I do like them, but we'll go and quickly recap what I'm looking at for the NFC East. I'll start from the bottom to the top. Starting at the bottom, we have the Giants at 5-12, the Commanders at 6-11, but electric, the Cowboys at 10-7, and the Eagles retaking the NFC East at 12-5. So, Kelcey, you alluded to it. We have some differences of opinion, but the floor is not yours, sir. This is your favorite division to talk about, and for better and for worse.
Yeah, so we'll just get straight into it and then kind of rip off the Band-Aid here. New York Giants, 4th in the division. Again, I was nicer than DJ, though. 7-10.
You had them respectable. I'm surprised. You had more than I did today already.
So I think Brian Dabble with Daniel Jones is going to give him a little bit more of a boost. I think standard Daniel Jones' team has 5 wins. But I think Brian Dabble's influence on Daniel Jones and I think the Malik Neighbors effect are going to get them a little bit more and get them to that 7-win mark. I have them beating the Cowboys in Dallas. And I have them beating the Eagles in Philadelphia. Those are the only 2 division wins they have, but those are the 2 they get because for some reason, Dallas and New York always split the series every year. It doesn't make sense. And Philadelphia lately with the Giants has always had an issue of trying to kind of put them away. They can get up on them, but they will never put the Giants away, it feels like. So I think that comes back to bite them at some point in time. And those are really the 2 difference in the win total here between me and you, if I'm being honest. I think everything else we probably pick the same, but those are probably the 2 that I'm like, yeah, these make sense. Just because of the way the East goes.
That makes sense. So, I had the 1-5 in the division for context. So yeah, that might be just the differences we have. But
yeah, so but this team does have holes. I just think where they tried to fill, I think it's a good spot to start to fill the holes. Like you start with offensive line, you start with defensive line, and you try to get a weapon out there for your quarterback that if you put that much money into, you need to have the ability to say, yes, that is an actual weapon, and not, no offense to Darius Slayton, love him, but that's Darius Slayton out there. Like that, that's not the same as saying that's Malik Neighbors. And again, no slight to Darius Slayton. Love the guy to death. Would love you in Dallas. Anyways, it's just one of those things with the Giants that there are concerns. You go from Saquon to Devin Singletary. That's a downgrade. No offense to Singletary again. But then on defense, you lose Xavier McKinney. Who are you replacing him with? A rookie? Okay. How's that going to work out for you? Now, don't get me wrong. I didn't have the highest opinion of Xavier McKinney, but not the same two players. One has NFL experience, and one was a starting defensive back in the NFL, and one is a rookie. So there are questions about the Giants, but I do think they'll surprise a couple teams, particularly the Cowboys. And by the way, I do need to point out you are wearing a Phillies stuff, and we are wearing, supposedly wearing things for teams every time we get a chance. Yeah, I'm wearing black because of just how sad I am about the potential futures of the NFC East succeeding beyond my wildest dream. That's not going to happen. But anyways, moving on. We're going to move on from the Giants because I don't need to beat up them too much. I got to dig in early. I don't need to get a second dig. This one's probably going to catch me some flack, and I don't care about it. The Eagles. But just really importantly, check the record. 10-7 for the Eagles, third in the division. It's wild to think, right? That they do well, but at the same time cannot get past second and third in the division. They end up third in this division. And people are going to wonder why. And I think Nick Sirianni is an okay coach. I don't think Nick Sirianni is a really good coach. I think Nick Sirianni has too much of an ego to be a quality head coach. I think he has the makings of a quality head coach, but he has too big of an ego that prevents him from succeeding. The whole drama last year with Jalen Hurts, there's always going to be a little bit of that in the back of the minds of every single player that was there last year. That's going to be important. The moment they start losing, you mentioned it, they go under 500 after week 6. There's no promises for Sirianni to still be there. But there will be promises for Jalen Hurts to still be there. I do think there are a lot of good pieces on this team, but I think those two, and then I rank the loss of Jason Kelcey as a huge loss. You mentioned it cripples teams down to third in the division. I agree, which is exactly why I have the Eagles at third in the division, is because while they did have valid potential replacements, it's still a replacement and a downgrade from a world tier center. This guy was dominating in his last season in the league, and no offense to whoever stepping into the foot of him, into his feet, they're not going to be the same. Jalen Hurts is going to have a learning curve with him. It is part of the process between quarterbacks and centers. You just have to deal with this. And that's an unfortunate part of how good the Eagles can be, is right now they are going to be very, very hampered by a center quarterback combination where there's a lot of communication that's going to have to happen pre-snap that with Kelcey and Hurts, that was like second nature. They had built that relationship. Now you put in a replacement, that relationship isn't necessarily the same. And especially if he's a center that prefers the guard to tap him to snap, that's not something Jason Kelcey did. Jason Kelcey was able to do it all by himself. So that's part of this. And then again, I'm bringing up the secondary because the secondary here, what did you do? You brought back the guy who cost you a Super Bowl? That's your plan? You're going to put him at safety? That's going to help you. You brought back Chauncey Gardner-Johnson? That's going to help you? No. If we're being honest about this team, that's not an improvement over what you did last year. I'm concerned Cooper DeJean is just the hype guy for the summer, for White Boy Summer. I am concerned. I can't lie. Let's not forget that the guy is from Iowa, and Iowa's defense wasn't that great last year. Now, he's good. His talent is off the charts. But, yeah, I mean, does it transition? We'll see. I have concerns, which is why I have him at 10-7. Obviously, I think I rank the loss of your center huge. A huge piece of this. I do like the moves you made in the offseason. But, again, I'm a lineman at heart, so I'm always going to look at the big line losses here. And I think Jason Kelcey, maybe it's me being respectful to an Eagle for once, but I think Jason Kelcey might be one of the best centers to ever play. If not top 3 and he's not number 3 and he's probably not number 2, or if he's number 2, it's very close. And that's high praise if you ask me. So yeah, I think they're really good. I think there's going to be some issues with the coaching staff and that loss with Kelcey, and those are going to be the deciding factors here. And I do think that secondary is going to lose them some games that they should win. I think the Giants sneaking in and beating the Eagles. I think Malik Neighbors is a reason they beat the Eagles. I think Malik Neighbors has the game-breaking ability to shredded secondary that's not necessarily on the same page. And they don't exactly send Darius Slay across the field to follow somebody. So that's a big part of it.
I will agree. One thing I will say about the secondary, the best thing the Eagles could do is get Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean out there as fast as they can. Don't roll with Darius Slayton and James Bradbury and be like, it's been working. We're going to go get the young kids out there to let them take the lumps early so you have them down the back half of the season. I think if you try and wait and you try and ride the James Bradbury train, because that second team All-Pro a few years ago because of the 70 sacks, you're going to get in trouble. Darius Slay is still the godfather, but you need him in sparing roles. I think you got to get the young guys out there as soon as you can. So that's my one chime in, is get the young guys on the field. That's your best chance. You lose a game early is better than losing 2 or 3 late.
Absolutely agree. 100% agree.
We'll do. I think by week 4 we will see, if not out with a gate, I think Quinyon Mitchell will be starting real quickly.
He should. I think the concern is the same thing you hit on with Sirianni, and we'll talk about this in just a minute, but I think concern being him losing some games early on, too many games early on, for trying something like that. So, we'll get to that in a second, but just moving on, we'll finish my list first, and then we'll talk about it. The number 2 team in the division, the Commanders, tied at 10-7 with the Eagles. This comes down to in-division record. I think the in-division difference here is Jaden Daniels. I think their additions in Austin Eckler, who, by the way, in his time in the Chargers, has dominated the NFC East teams. He is an absolute NFC East torture device. I hated seeing him. I think every other player, every other fan of a team in the NFC East hates seeing him still in division. Obviously, there's a huge question of why they got rid of Jahan Dotson. I don't understand that. I'll never understand that. But I do think that Jaden Daniels has an absolute weapon in Scary Terry. And I think Jaden Daniels is a guy that in himself is going to have to be accounted for. You're not going to be able to guard 10 on 11. You're going to be guarding 11v11 every single time. And you probably need to focus 2 guys on Daniels just to be safe, because he does have the ability and he is a willing runner. And I think that's a big piece of why I have the Commanders here at 10-7. I'm going 4-2 in division. So when I say this team is going to surprise some folks, I do think they're going to surprise some folks here and do something different. And I think that's what this offense is about. I think that's what getting Jaden Daniels is doing for somebody. It's going to do something different until they get tape on them, which is always a big part of this conversation. It takes a season to really get legitimate tape on somebody. And we saw it that's why we always see a second-year regression from really, really good rookies. But you don't have that yet with Daniels. You don't know what he's going to do. And you gave him weapons to work. Obviously, getting rid of Dotson is a different conversation. But as of right now, you gave them weapons. And we'll see what he can do with that. But I do think he's going to be better than none at 10-7. I also think they're going to figure out whatever's going on with their secondary and whatever happening in preseason. Emmanuel Forbes, I don't even know what happened there. But he has talent. I don't know what happened to get him on the bench. It's not good from him. But yeah, I think this team's going to be good enough to surprise some folks. And I think their schedule is one of those schedules where you're like, oh, well, this is the team that picked in the top 5. They get a top 5 draft pick schedule. So, that's always helpful in these conversations. And then we're going to get on to the top of the division. And I don't like this. I don't like it. I wish I could take it back. But like I said, I picked it blindly, and I'm going with it. It's the Cowboys 11-6. Obviously, Deron Bland getting hurt changed my mind real quick and in a hurry about this 11-6 idea, because I did think that the big reason they were going to go 11-6 is they had 2 really good corners, and they got Trayvon Diggs back. And as much as I've hated on Trayvon Diggs in his entire career, I will say that as far as corners go in the league, he is one of the best corners when he's healthy. Deron Bland proved he is one of the best corners in the league last year when he led the league in interceptions. That is 2 corners that at some point in time in their career have led the league in interceptions. on the same team when healthy. Problem is they're not both healthy. Second problem is there's questions across the rest of this defense, and it's just where it is. The offensive line, up the gut in the offensive line. Are you going to be solid enough? The running backs, are you going to be solid enough? Can you rely on just Dak Prescott, Jake Ferguson, and CeeDee Lamb? Brandon Cooks occasionally? I don't know. That's why I hate this. The fact this happened. I wanted to say in the rip that I did not actively choose this thing to happen, but given their schedule and given their ability to win in different ways, I think that's why they're going to go 11-6. And I do think Micah Parsons is a absolute havoc maker. He will, whatever your game plan is, throw it out of the books, throw it out of in the river as soon as he breaks through the line, because there's no defending a guy that gets to you within 1.5 seconds. It's insane. Double team him, do what you got to do to fix it, but his ability to get to the quarterback needs to be brought back. Dan Quinn did a great job with that when he was coaching Parsons, of just sending him after the quarterback, not giving him too much to think about, and just saying, go wreak havoc, and he did. And I think that's going to be a big loss for him, but I think he's already learned in 2.5 years that, yeah, okay, I can play this at this level. I think Dexter Lawrence is going to figure himself out this year. I think this is going to be a year we have a decent Dexter Lawrence, not great, just decent. So that's why I got the Cowboys here, 11-6, taking the top division. But I will say, just like you said about Sirianni, if this team is the opposite end of the spectrum, where they are struggling, Mike McCarthy is gone. And yes, that's probably the likely case. So, DJ, what do you think?
Well, there is a receiver that knows the Dallas area pretty well by the name of Noah Brown, who's out there if they need some help. I mean, you could bring him. There was a point in the last year when he's top 3 in receiving. So if they need a guy, he's out there somewhere. But Commanders, I wanted to do the same with them so bad. Like every game I looked at, I was like, oh, I'm so close. Like they could be like RG3's Commanders that just came out of nowhere. I'm still just worried about it. And if you tell me Jane Daniels is going to stay very healthy, I can see this very, very likely. The literal cartoonish way he gets hit sticked always worries me. Like when even going back to like that Florida State game at the beginning of last year when he tried to hurdle through the middle of the line and just gets helicoptered. I don't need him doing that with Micah Parsons or with Jordan Davis and his name eludes, Jalen Carter against the Eagles. I don't need you doing that up the middle of that defense. That will be a car crash in the middle of the field if they do that. I don't need that going on. So I like a lot there. I'm a little bit worried, but I can very easily see this. I can see them winning the division. They burned me last year when I tried to believe in them, so I'm not going to do it again this year. But they could be right in the middle of it. The Cowboys are always in the thick of it. As much as we rip on them in the playoffs, the regular season, you can almost.
They're regular season superstars. I think is that they have a star on their side of the helmet. It's not for championships. It is definitely for regular season positive.
Exactly. We already touched on the Eagles. There is a path, and they just have to take the path and not let it get distracted. With the Giants, we kind of talked about it. They could be good-ish, but they're good-ish is like 7-10. They're unfortunately in a division full of teams that are better than them. That's the only way I know how to really put it at this point. Maybe they surprise like they did last year where they were the worst team in the division but finished with the second worst record. Maybe they pull something like that off again, but good luck. That's all I got from at this point.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. It's just we'll have to wait and see. This is the thing with the NFC East. You just never know. I hate it because it's so random. Picking with your heart doesn't work. Picking with your brain doesn't work. So just pick somewhere in between, which is why I'm hoping that blindly picking this gets me somewhere close.
Picking with your car.
Yeah, picking with my dog at this point in time where she only goes to one bowl. But yeah, no, we'll see what happens there. But just to recap here for my NFC East predictions, starting at the bottom, I have the New York Giants at 7-10. Not that bad. Philadelphia Eagles coming in at 3rd in the division. Still not that bad, though, when they go 10-7. Washington Commanders, 2nd in the division, tied with the Eagles at a 10-7 record. And the Dallas Cowboys, top of the division, much to my maligned opinion, at 11-6.
Best way to put it. And for the last anonymous fan vote for the divisions of the year, taking a look from the bottom to the top, the Giants at 3-14. The Commanders at 5-12, the Cowboys at 8-9, and the Eagles at 10-7. So, on literally all accounts, that was more brutal to than all three of them than we were. So you know what? We were the good teachers today. We did not break out the red pen to the same extent.
I'm not used to being the good guy in these situations. What just happened? Did we just get replaced on our own show for the bad guy? Like, does this fan vote just take over the bad guy in this opinion in this
I
moment?
suppose so. I guess like there is no longer I guess it's not the good guy and the bad guy. It's the two relatively laid back.
It's no longer highs and lows in the high low podcast. It's just highs because that guy is those folks are just picking the lows there in the fan vote.
That was absolutely brutal. And for next year, if someone is interested in being that anonymous fan vote, feel free to reach out to us, and we will pick somebody from that group as well too. See if they want to chime in next year and see if their predictions get on the board. So we'll definitely keep an eye out for that. But that's going to do it for the division predictions. Next week, we're talking playoffs up to a Super Bowl matchup and champion, as well as we're going to pick some awards next week. So next week's going to be a very fun show. 24 hours before kickoff of the new NFL season. I can't wait for it, Kelcey. And I think we're going to have some surprises in those awards and the Super Bowl predictions too. Last year, they did us a little bit dirty thanks to injuries in some cases. Year before that, we were pretty solid. And then the 2 years before that, we were pretty spot on, where you had the matchup right. And then the next year I had the Rams right. So maybe we'll get back on the horse this year, and teams will stay healthy so we don't look silly.
It's okay. You can say back on the saddle. We're done talking about the Cowboys for now.
I couldn't think of the word, so I just said
But yeah, no, we'll see what happens. Obviously, playoffs are one of those weird things, right? You just have to wait and see. As we talked about, there's so many teams that if they make the playoffs is one thing, but if they make the playoffs and win, it's a much better thing. So I think if we're being fair, DJ, should we show the folks at least their playoff seeding going into next week so they have an idea?
Not yet. Let's go ahead and wait. They can see it. They can see it next week. Anyone who doesn't know for sure, you can go back and listen to the episodes, take a gander, see what you like about it too. You can kind of infer based on the records who will be in there. We'll go ahead and break it all down at the start of next week, and it's going to be an absolutely fun episode. So you definitely want to be sure to tune that, and be sure to stick around to subscribe to keep up with Fantasy Fridays coming every Friday during the season, where we talk about various things in the world of fantasy football. Hopefully help you win your league, or at the very least not have to suffer from those very painful things at the bottom, whether it's running a 40-yard dash or sitting in a Waffle House for 24 hours straight. There's a lot of very bad punishments for last place, and we will keep you from that.
Yeah, look, I've been falling down that TikTok rabbit hole of bad fantasy football punishments right now. I think that still the worst one so far has been to completely wax your entire body. And I do mean the entire body, including the head on top of your hair, or the hair on top of your head.
So look here, everybody. Fantasy Fridays, where you will, if not win your league, which is our goal, we will keep you from that, because there will be some diamonds in the rough. Go ahead and check out our last week's episode where I break down some players that I really like based on their ADP, so you can get a very high ceiling player at a very good price, or somebody even with a high floor at a very good price as well too, including somebody that we talked about today, who I will not mention directly. You're going to have to go check it out there, but you could probably infer. So go check out Fantasy Fridays on our YouTube page. And of course, be sure to tune in with us next Wednesday as we give you our Super Bowl predictions. But that'll do it for us this week. We appreciate y'all for hanging out with us, and we will see you all again next week.